A person like me that records these videos and sort of like is a dealer of pearls of great price, pearls of wisdom, the hearers stumble upon what I'm saying and they realize what I'm saying is a pearl of great price. Now, it's also like gemstones. Dig it in the sand and you see something, and you see something that's really looks like, has a brilliance to it. And it's more it's an expensive gemstone. It's like an emerald or a diamond, a precious aquamarine beryl. It's really something way more than the rest of the stones that you was raking through. Let's go to Matthew 13:45. Jesus is talking about the kingdom of heaven, and he's comparing it to different things. And in this one, he says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls. Okay, that's what he's looking for. Who, when he had found one, it was a pearl of great price. So what does he do? He goes, he sells all that he has, and he buys that pearl. Now, to me, that pearl of great price was probably, I think he was referring to the gospel itself, the good news, the thing that causes a man to attain everlasting life and obtain the kingdom of heaven becomes within him, and he becomes a totally different man, totally happy, totally joyous, because he knows who his Messiah, his Savior is. And he knows it for sure. And you can't take it away from him. It's a pearl of great price. And what does he do? He goes and sells all he has. He totally gives himself up to walk with Jesus. He's like the rich man that had to sell everything he had and follow him. And I think that rich man did do that. I think he's Mark. That's a different story. But so he now has and he deals with pearls of wisdom. And there are little nuggets every now and then when I'm going through these prophecies. I notice something that stands out to me. And I got two examples to bring to you today. Two examples that I have actually in my videos. I've mentioned them, but this particular video right now that I'm making is just an example of finding precious precious pearls of wisdom. For the first one, let's go to Zechariah 11:8. And I don't know. Let's see if you guys ever saw this before, or if you ever read it. If you ever read Zechariah, you probably, like me. I mean, I do the same thing. I go right over it and don't even think about it. But sometimes I wonder what he's talking about. And Zechariah 11:8, he says, "3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month." Now this is God talking. And he says, "My soul loathed them, and their soul also abhorred me." Okay? Now, to go over, I just want to go over first the word loathe. It's God is saying, my soul loathe. Now, if you look that up, the Hebrew word for there, in Strong's there, it has to do with reaping. It's used 22 times as the word reap, the action of reaping. All right? So it's also has to do with being shortened. That was used 5 times for shortened, 1 time for discouraged, and the 1 time for loathe, used 1 time for loathe. Now, what it has to do with is being, reaping and being totally disappointed of what your results were. And in that sense, you're disappointed, you're discouraged. It's a vexation to you, and it's a grieve. It makes you grieved that you do it. For example, what I'm talking about here, let's go to Jeremiah 12:13. Just that little piece there. They have sown wheat, but shall reap thorns. Okay? So that's the kind of thing. I mean, God put a lot of effort into developing the high priesthood. And he starts with Aaron, and he's pleased with Aaron, and he's pleased and pleased. And then all of a sudden, they come to the time Jesus walked, and these guys were so far away from the love of God and what a shepherd, a shepherd high priest is supposed to do. He's disappointed in what he has. Hosea 8. They have sown wind, and they shall reap a whirlwind. See, a total removal of what you're expecting for your reaping. So when they sow wind, it's like they're sowing nothing. They're sowing vanity, emptiness. And what are they going to reap? What's the whirlwind? What's the end of days with the whirlwind? It's a battle of Armageddon. It's described as a whirlwind in Daniel. So they come up short. It's really a disappointment. And then the other word there they have towards him, it's that word abhor. They abhorred him. Now, what does that mean? That has to do with getting gain hastily and with a lot of greed. You're greedy for something, you're wicked and you want something and it's really not yours, but you grab it and you take it for yourself. And that's the idea of what they're doing when they abhor Jesus. And also God the Father as well. It's the way what this greed is all about is the high priest at the time, Annas and Caiaphas, both served as the high priest. You see that in Luke. Okay, they both served as the high priest. What is it that they wanted? What did Jesus have? Jesus was the high priest too. He was of the order of Melchizedek. But anyway, what did he have that they didn't have? And that was a sincere heart to be a shepherd. They were only after getting favor from men. They were after that. They wanted men to look up to them, calling them rabbi. Rabbi, the word rabbi means great, a great master, a great person. And they wanted to exemplify that greatness. And they wanted people to look up to them the way they should be looking up to God and the way they should have been looking up to Jesus. And they were looking up to Jesus like that. His fame went pretty quick when he started doing miracles, when he started doing his healings. He walked in truth, and there was no deception in him. He wasn't deceiving anybody. He was only there to help them, to strengthen them, to teach them about the kingdom of heaven. The good news that there is salvation for everybody. That's something that it is a pearl of great price. So I see this verse and I see it and it says, I cut off in 1 month 3 shepherds. And I was wondering, what is he talking about there? And I knew that he never really got along with the high priest Ananias and his son-in-law Caiaphas, and he also had another son called Jonathan. All right. Now, if I look this up in the Wikipedia under the word Annas, and I was looking for what years he reigned, and it turns out that he reigned as a high priest for 18 years, and he ended his high priest ended in 36/37 A.D. Okay, it was about 7 years after Jesus uh, went up into heaven as the high priest that he is. So anyway, so 7 years later, Caiaphas, between the end of 36 and the beginning of 37, now both this is all when all of this happened, must have happened. So in the beginning, in the end of 36, the beginning of 37, when this all sort of happened, that had to have happened, and this is the only time it could have happened, in looking at the list of the high priests when they reigned. All right, it was really the only thing in the whole list of high priests when it was recorded of their reigning, of the time of their serving as high priest. All right, so we're talking now, again, the end of 36 AD, the beginning of 37. There's a month in there. There's about 30 days in there. You could easily get about 30 days in there. Caiaphas is no longer there. Jonathan, the son of Annas, not the son-in-law, the son of Annas, is ended. His high priest ends, and Annas himself ends, because he was a high priest with Caiaphas. So I think what happened was Caiaphas and Ananias, both of them get cut off. And again, the word is reaping. It has to do with just reaping it off, and then being disappointed, and that's the reason why you're shortening. It actually also means to shorten. So I think the son Jonathan took over, and he ends at the same exact time frame. He ends. And then after that, Theophilus, who is son of Annas, again another son. He has another son that takes over, Theophilus. And he has 4 years, but he starts his 4 years in 37. So you see how it all fits, where 3 shepherds are taken away, and these guys were the ones that brought forth false witnesses to make sure that he breaks the law, and he really didn't break the law and all of that, and everybody knows that. And all the listeners probably know that they were really wicked, greedy, and they are getting rid of Jesus because the people are looking up to him and not to them. I mean, before Jesus came, they were the boss. They were the rabbis. They were the masters that everybody looked up to. They wanted that because they're, I don't know. That's just part of the wickedness of men. What I'm saying is that this is something that you overlook, and you never realize that it's there, confirming all of the deceit and falsehood, and we are sharing the anguish that God is going through with these guys in charge of shepherding. Remember, he said he had compassion on the people, for they were like sheep without a shepherd. There was no shepherding in these people. These people were just in it for themselves. Now I'm going to move on to another pearl of great price, where you just sort of like look it over and you don't see it, but but you just stop and think about it, and you can figure it out. And it
Now,
has to do
in
with
order for us to completely agree that Jesus, Yehoshua, is the one who effectively cast out Satan and sent him to his destination, which is the lake of fire at the end. So, in order for us to be fully convinced, I want to go to Micah chapter 5, verse 2, where it's you can't deny that they're talking about Jesus. But thou, Bethlehem, where was he born? Everybody knows he was born in Bethlehem. Ephrathah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah. Bethlehem, by the way, first of all, it means house of bread, and he's the bread of life. And it's the city. It's David's city. That's why Joseph and Mary were from the house of David, and that's the reason why they went to their father's lineage destinated place of origin. Anyway, but thou Bethlehem, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, so it's a small little town. Yet out of thee shall he come forth shall he come forth unto me that is to be the ruler in Israel, whose going forth has been from old, from everlasting. Okay, so he's going to be the ruler in Israel. So there's going to be a ruler in Israel. It's going to come out of Bethlehem, and his going forth has been from old and from everlasting. In other words, from before the foundation of the world, he was. He's part of the Trinity. He's the Son, the Father, the Son, and the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, the Comforter. He's part of it from everlasting. So there it is. I mean, you can't argue with that. I'm sorry. It's hard. It's very hard to say, nah, it's not Jesus. And it's also including the fact that he's number one, he's a ruler, he's King of Kings, he's King of the Jews, he's King of all of us, he's King of all the believers, he's King of everybody that's in the book of life that's going to the millennium in the resurrection. All right. So that's where I wanted to get a good fitting. Now let's go over to verse 4. And he, this ruler, the shepherd, shall stand and feed in the. He's going to feed his sheep in the strength of the Lord. Lord is capitalized, which means in the strength of Yud He Vav He, the Trinity, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. Again, capitals. That whenever you see that in the King James Bible that I got, at least, it's telling you that it's Yud He Vav He, the Trinity, his God. Now, when it says God, it's Elohim, his mighty one. And they shall abide. They shall abide means that they will always be everlasting as well. They shall abide. In other words, constantly be there. For now, shall he be great unto the ends of the earth. So he's going to be forever. So you see, they shall abide. So he was, and then it's for now. So he is, and then he shall be great unto the ends of the earth. So he will be. So he was, he is, and he will be, right there. Let's go over to verse 5, the next verse. And this man, now man is in italics. It really isn't there. Whenever it's in italics, It's not in the original verse. So I'm going to skip it. And this shall be the peace when the Assyrian shall come into our land, and when he shall tread in our palaces, then shall we raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 principal men. Now, this verse is often overlooked, and people don't really talk about it that much. I mean, I never heard anybody preach on this. But this is a very powerful one because it's, again, a prophecy that makes it, again, outstanding that it's Jesus talking about. Now, when the Assyrian, who's the Assyrian? Well, the Assyrian was one of the heads, was the second head of the dragon. First you had Egypt, then you had the Assyrian. And the Assyrian were the ones that came in and captured the Israel, the 10 tribes of Israel. They didn't touch Judah, but they touched the 10 tribes. They didn't touch Judah or Benjamin. And also a lot of Levites were stayed in Israel, in Judah. But they took a lot of Levites as well, because there were Levites that were servicing Israel, and Israel was in sin at the time, and that's the reason why God allowed them to come in and take them. So anyway, the enemy is now camped and in our palaces, which, when you say the palaces, you could say the synagogues, you could say our places of worship, because that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about um, robbing us from our living God and trying to blindfold us to worship images and things, and that's what they were doing. They were worshiping images, and they were messed up in the truth, which Judah did, by the way, as well. That's why Babylon came in and took them, and that's the third head of the beast, of the dragon. Okay, so anyway, the part that I want to point out is I want to try to convey who the 7 shepherds and 8 principal men are. All right, so let's go over to Galatians 2, verse 9. Now, this is Paul talking. And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given to me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go unto the heathen, or the uncircumcised, and they unto the circumcised. So that they were dividing the shepherdship between the flock of the circumcised, believers in Jesus in the circumcised, and believers in Jesus, which is now new, and Paul was going to help make it grow and birth and become really, really great, Paul and Barnabas, and they were the shepherds for that. Okay, so that gives us 5 shepherds. Okay, and there are 9 principal. The rest of the disciples are 9 principal men. Now that doesn't add up the way it seems to want to add up. But don't forget that James was sacrificed. He was taken and sacrificed, and he was no longer a shepherd. And he had that shepherdship had to be replaced. There had to be, it was replaced. And Peter says in Acts 12, go tell James, and James of Zebedee was already sacrificed. So who was the James he was talking about? And there's controversy over that. Almost all the commentaries always say it was James's earthly brother, and I totally disagree with that, because it totally has disrespect for the 12 apostles. There was another James, James of Alphaeus, who was an apostle, who was, I don't want to get into it, but what I'm going to say is James of Alphaeus took his place, and he was the one in Acts 15, who, Acts 15:13, James stands up and clarifies a very important topic, which is what the Gentiles had to observe as far as the law goes. So that was a very important thing, and I believe it was James of Alphaeus that stepped up and did that. Okay, now now that means now there's 8 principal men, because James is now included in the shepherds. So there are 4 shepherds to Israel, and we still only have 2. But don't forget that Barnabas was also replaced. For some reason, they separated. The apostles were sent out by 2, and so he needed another partner, and Silas took that up. So Silas becomes the 7th shepherd. And it doesn't matter that there are still only 5 active, because the other 2 shepherds were still shepherds. You can't say they never worked as a shepherd. They did. Okay, so that's the that's all I can say about it.